23 hours after the human broadcast, War Master Kethvar stood on his bridge watching his fleet retreat from human space. The withdrawal had been fast, almost panicked. His proud invasion force looked more like refugees fleeing a disaster. Navigation. "Officer, confirm our position," he ordered. "We are now outside human territorial space, War Master. All ships report successful withdrawal." Kethvar nodded grimly. Around him, his bridge crew worked in unusual silence. The confidence they had shown just days ago was completely gone. Intelligence Officer Vextar. Final report on human military capabilities. Vextar checked his instruments one last time. "War Master, our best estimates show that humanity possesses the largest military force in known galactic history. Conservative calculations suggest they could defeat every other spacefaring civilization simultaneously. And we declared war on them. Yes, sir, we declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Kethvar looked out at the stars, thinking about how badly he had miscalculated. "Vextar, send a message to the High Command. Tell them the invasion is canceled. Tell them we have discovered that humans are not weak. Tell them we are very lucky to be alive." Back in human space, the military awakening was slowly winding down. Not because the threat was over, but because the message had been sent loud and clear. The galaxy now remembered why humans had chosen peace. On Europa, Admiral Dan Cooper watched his reserve fleet settle back into standby mode. The massive ships didn't return to storage. Instead, they took up patrol positions throughout human space, a visible reminder of human military power. "Commander Taylor, what's the status of our fleet?" "All ships operational and ready, sir. Should we return them to storage?" Dan shook his head. "No. Keep them active for now. Something tells me the galaxy needs a reminder of what human peace really means." On Mars, the Olympus Mons shipyard continued building new vessels, though at a reduced pace. Chief Engineer Tony Rivera walked through the facility, amazed at how quickly everything had come back to life. "Maria, how many ships did we build during the alert?" Engineer Maria Santos checked her reports. 247 major vessels, plus about 1,000 support ships, all in less than 24 hours. And that was just our facility. Tony whistled low. The Zephyrians really had no idea what they were asking for. "Tony, I've been thinking. Should we be worried about what we just showed the galaxy? I mean, we basically proved that we could conquer everyone if we wanted to." Tony considered this. "Maria, that's exactly why we've been peaceful for 3,000 years. Our ancestors knew that being able to do something doesn't mean you should do it. In the Heritage Archive, Dr. Kate Williams was beginning the process of returning the facility to its normal quiet state, but she left many systems active, just in case. Computer, maintain current readiness level. Authorization Williams Alpha 7. Confirmed. Heritage Archive will remain at 70% activation level." Kate walked through the vast storage areas, looking at weapons that could reshape the galaxy. "Computer, analysis, what would happen if humanity actually went to full military mobilization? Based on current production capabilities and military technology, humanity could achieve total galactic dominance within 6 months. Estimated casualties among opposing forces, 97%. Estimated human casualties, less than 1%. And that's why we choose peace." Affirmative. Human military superiority is so complete that warfare is no longer a viable option for conflict resolution. Across the galaxy, other civilizations were having emergency meetings. The human broadcast had been seen by everyone, and the implications were staggering. In the Altarian Council chambers, High Chancellor Zelmora addressed the assembly. "Fellow councilors, we have just witnessed the most significant military demonstration in galactic history. Humanity has revealed capabilities that dwarf our combined fleets." "What should our response be?" asked Councillor Veltar. "Gratitude," Zelamora replied. Gratitude that they choose to be our friends instead of our conquerors. Similar conversations were happening throughout known space. The Rigel Federation immediately sent messages of friendship and offers of favorable trade. Agreements. The Vegan Empire quietly canceled all military expansion plans. The Centauri Alliance began planning a formal alliance proposal, but the most important conversation was happening on the Zephyrian home world. High Commander Drakvar, supreme leader of the Zephyrian Empire, sat in his war room reading Kethvar's report. So, War Master Kethvar, you have learned why the humans have been peaceful. Yes, High Commander. They were not weak. They were restraining themselves. How badly did we miscalculate? Kethvar looked at his data one more time. High Commander, if the humans had decided to fight us seriously, they could have destroyed our entire civilization in less than a week. We never had any chance of victory. And yet they let us retreat peacefully. Yes, sir, they could have destroyed us. But they chose mercy instead. Drakvar was quiet for a long moment. Kethvar, prepare a formal apology to the human government. Also prepare a treaty proposal. If we cannot defeat them, we should at least try to avoid angering them again. Yes. High Commander, what terms should I propose? Whatever terms they want. We are no longer in a position to negotiate. On Earth, Director Helen Brooks was meeting with her senior staff to discuss the aftermath of the crisis. The emergency was over, but the implications would last for generations. General Walsh, what's our current military status? Ma'am, we're maintaining enhanced readiness across all sectors. The fleet is active, production facilities are operational, and defense systems remain online. Captain Adams, what's the galactic reaction been? Overwhelmingly positive, ma'am. We've received friendship messages from 37 different civilizations, trade offers from dozens more, 3 requests for formal alliances, and 1 very apologetic message from the Zephyrian High Command. Helen smiled. I suppose word travels fast. Yes, ma'am. The broadcast reached every corner of known space. Everyone knows what humanity is capable of now. Good. Maybe that will help keep the peace. Dr. Sam Peterson, the military historian, raised his hand. Director, I have a question. What do we do now that everyone knows our true capabilities? The same thing we've been doing for 3,000 years, Sam. We choose peace. We choose to use our strength to protect rather than conquer. We choose to be better than our weapons. But, ma'am, some people might see our restraint as weakness again. Helen shook her head. Not anymore, Sam. Now they know the truth. They know that our peace comes from strength, not weakness. They know that we could be conquerors, but we choose to be protectors instead. Jake Morrison, watching from Earth Defense Station, summed up the situation perfectly in his daily log. Today we reminded the galaxy why humans have been peaceful for 3,000 years. Not because we forgot how to fight, but because we became too good at it. The Zephyrians thought they were declaring war on a weak species. Instead, they woke up the most dangerous military force in galactic history. Fortunately for them, that force chose mercy over vengeance. As the weeks passed, the galaxy settled into a new normal. Human military forces remained active but peaceful. Other civilizations approached humanity with new respect and caution. Trade flourished as species that had once considered humans weak now competed for their friendship. The Zephyrian Empire became one of humanity's most loyal allies, their former arrogance replaced by genuine respect. War Master Kethvar was promoted for his role in preventing a catastrophic war through his strategic retreat. And throughout human space, the great military machine settled back into its patient watch. Ready for war, but hoping for peace. Strong. Enough to conquer the galaxy, but wise enough to protect it instead. The lesson was clear. True strength was not the ability to destroy your enemies, but the wisdom to turn them into friends. Humanity had learned this lesson 3,000 years ago, and the galaxy was better for it. The greatest victory was the war that never happened, ended not by weapons, but by the wisdom to show strength without using it. Peace through superior. Firepower held in check by superior wisdom. This was the human way, to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and to use that danger to keep the galaxy safe. The massive crystal ship moved through space like a floating mountain. Its surface gleamed under the light of distant stars. Inside the ship, Admiral HFY walked down the long hallway toward the council chamber. His scaled skin reflected the blue lights that lined the walls. He carried a datapad in his four-fingered hand. The information on it would change everything. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their ships were the fastest. Their weapons were the strongest. Their armies had never lost a war. 700 star systems bowed to their rule. No species had ever challenged them and survived. But today, Admiral HFY brought news that worried him deeply. The council chamber was huge. The ceiling stretched so high that shadows hid the top. 7 chairs sat in a circle. At the center, each chair held a hierarch, the rulers of the empire. Their eyes glowed like small suns in the dim light. "Admiral HFY," said Vorthak the Ancient. His voice echoed through the chamber. "You called for an emergency meeting. What news do you bring from the Outer Rim?" HFY stopped in the center of the circle. He looked at each hierarch in turn. "Honored ones, my fleet has found a new species. They live on a small blue planet in a system they call Sol. The species calls itself human. Another primitive race," said Hierarch Melthera. She waved one of her 4 arms. "Why do you waste our time with this?" "Because these humans are different," HFY said. He activated his datapad. A hologram appeared above it. The image showed a green and blue planet covered in white clouds. At first, my science teams thought they were like any other young species. But after 3 months of study, we found something that frightens me. The hierarchs made a humming sound. In Zephyrian culture, this meant they thought something was funny. "You fear creatures that cannot even leave their own planet?" asked Hierarch Zeklon. "I fear creatures that have turned their entire world into a weapon," HFY replied. The hologram changed. Now it showed images of human cities. Tall buildings reached toward the sky. Roads stretched between them like spider webs. But HFY focused on other details: military bases, weapon factories, missile silos hidden in the ground. "Look at their development pattern," HFY said. "Most species we find spend their early years learning to grow food and build homes. Humans did that too, but they also spent just as much time learning to kill each other." The hologram showed scenes from human history. Ancient warriors with swords and shields, soldiers with guns hiding in trenches, flying machines dropping explosive bombs on cities, ships shooting missiles across vast oceans. They have had over 200 major wars in just the last 1,000 years, HFY continued. They fight each other constantly, but each war teaches them something new. Each conflict makes their weapons better. They learn from every defeat and come back stronger. Vorthak leaned forward in his chair. "Show us their current military power." The hologram shifted again. Now it displayed human weapons. Nuclear missiles that could destroy entire cities. Chemical weapons that could kill millions. Biological weapons that could spread like diseases. Space rockets that could carry warheads anywhere on their planet. "They split the atom less than 100 years ago," HFY explained. "Most species take 500 years to go from first flight to nuclear power. Humans did it in 60 years, and they immediately turned it into a weapon. Their technology is still primitive compared to ours," said Hierarch Ralthek. "Their fastest ships use chemical fuel. They cannot travel faster than light. They have not even built a permanent base on their own moon." "That is what worries me most," HFY said. The hologram now showed human soldiers in training. They moved through difficult terrain. They climbed mountains and crossed deserts. They learned to fight in every possible condition. They are still stuck on one planet, but they have already prepared for every type of warfare imaginable. They train for battles in space even though they cannot reach space with their armies yet. The Admiral touched his datapad again. The hologram showed human research facilities. Scientists worked on new materials. Engineers designed better engines. Computer experts created artificial intelligence programs. They advance faster than any species we have recorded, HFY said. And they advance through conflict. When they cannot fight others, they compete with themselves. Everything becomes a challenge. Everything becomes a race. Their entire culture is built around the idea of overcoming obstacles through force and intelligence. Hierarch Melthara stood up from her chair. Even if this is true, what can one small planet do against our empire? We have conquered thousands of worlds. We have defeated species with technology far beyond what these humans possess. Those species fought with honor, HFY replied. They followed rules of war. They had military traditions. They could be predicted and defeated using standard tactics. Humans do not fight with honor. They fight to win. The hologram changed. One last time. It showed human military doctrines. Guerrilla warfare, suicide attacks, psychological operations, economic warfare, cyber attacks, biological weapons disguised as medical research. They have no concept of fair fighting, HFY explained. If they cannot win with strength, they win with intelligence. If they cannot win with intelligence, they win with deception. If they cannot win with deception, they win by making the cost of victory too high for their enemies to bear. The council chamber fell silent. The hierarchs looked at the holographic displays with new interest. For the first time in centuries, they were seeing something that challenged their understanding of warfare. "What do you recommend?" asked Vorthak. "Leave them alone," HFY said without hesitation. "Place their system under quarantine. Let them develop naturally. Perhaps in a few thousand years, they will become more civilized. But right now, any contact with them will end badly for us." Hierarch Ralthek laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber. "You want us to fear a species that has not even left its home system? The Empire has survived for 3 millennia by expanding and conquering. We will not change our ways because of one small planet full of primitive warriors." "They are not primitive," HFY insisted. "They are efficient. There is a difference. A primitive species fights with what nature gave them. An efficient species turns everything around them into a weapon. These humans will use our own strength against us." But the hierarchs had already made their decision. Vorthak stood up from his chair. His massive form cast a shadow over the Admiral. "The Empire does not retreat from primitive species. We will send a contact fleet to this sol system. The humans will join our civilization peacefully, or they will be conquered like all the others." HFY bowed his head. "As you command, honored ones, but I ask to be relieved of this duty. I do not wish to be responsible for what happens next. Your request is denied," Vorthak said. "You will lead the contact fleet personally. Your fears have made you too cautious. This mission will remind you why the Empire has never been defeated." As HFY left the council chamber, he looked back at the holographic display one last time. It showed a human child playing with toy soldiers. The child was no more than 6 years old, but already he was planning battle strategies, moving his pieces around a board like a general commanding armies. The Admiral walked back to his ship with heavy steps. He had tried to warn them. He had shown them the evidence, but the hierarchs would not listen. They could not imagine that their perfect empire might face a threat from such a small, distant world. In 3 days, his fleet would travel to the Sol system. They would make contact with the humans, and HFY was certain that nothing would ever be the same again. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the destroyer New York and watched the alien ship approach Earth. The massive vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It moved without any visible engines. Its surface seemed to be made of living crystal that shifted colors as it traveled through space. "How big is that thing?" asked Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez from his position at the tactical station. "Computer estimates it at 12 kilometers long," replied Ensign Lisa Chen from communications. "That's bigger than Manhattan." Morrison gripped the rail in front of him. For 6 months, Earth's deep space sensors had been tracking strange signals from beyond the solar system. The signals had patterns that suggested intelligence. Now they knew for certain that humanity was not alone in the universe. "Sir, we're getting more contacts," Chen reported. 3 more ships just appeared behind the first one. They came out of nowhere." Morrison turned to Rodriguez. "Alex, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command. Tell General Kane that our worst fears just came true." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew this moment would come eventually. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for first contact with alien life. The preparations had not been peaceful. Morrison remembered his training at the Earth Defense Academy. The instructors had been clear about one thing. Any species that could travel between stars was dangerous by definition. They had technology that humans could barely imagine. If they wanted to destroy Earth, they probably could. But humanity had advantages too. Earth was their home. They knew every asteroid, every satellite, every piece of space debris in the solar system. More importantly, humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They understood tactics and strategy in ways that peaceful species might not. "Captain, the lead ship is transmitting," Chen announced. "Universal Translator is working on it." The main screen flickered to life. The image showed a creature that stood over 8 feet tall. Its skin was covered in dark blue scales. 4 arms extended from its broad shoulders. Its eyes glowed with yellow light. When it spoke, the translator converted its words into English. "Primitive inhabitants of the 3rd planet," the alien said. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world and your species are now under Imperial protection. You will prepare immediately for integration into our civilization." Morrison stepped forward. He had practiced this moment many times, in simulation, but facing a real alien commander was different. "Admiral, I'm Captain Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. Earth doesn't need your protection. We're perfectly capable of taking care of ourselves." The alien's expression changed. Morrison could not read alien emotions, but something in those glowing eyes suggested surprise. "You refuse the Empire's generous offer? Your species lacks the technology to survive in the greater galaxy. Accept our guidance willingly or face the consequences." "The only consequence we're worried about is what happens if you don't leave our system peacefully," Morrison replied. "You have 12 hours to withdraw beyond the asteroid belt. After that, we'll consider your presence an act of war." The transmission ended. The bridge crew looked at their captain with a mixture of admiration and terror. They had just threatened a species that could travel faster than light. "Sir," Rodriguez said quietly, "do you think that was wise?" "Probably not," Morrison admitted, "but giving in to their demands definitely wasn't wise. At least now we know where we stand." Within minutes, Earth's defense network came alive. Hidden bases throughout the solar system powered up weapons that had been waiting in silence for decades. The asteroid belt revealed itself to be more than just floating rocks. Hundreds of automated defense platforms emerged from camouflaged positions. Morrison opened a communication channel to all Earth defense ships. "This is Morrison aboard New York. You all know why we're here. Humanity has prepared for this day, since we first looked up at the stars. These aliens think we're primitive. They think we'll surrender without a fight. Let's show them how wrong they are." The alien fleet moved into attack formation. 3 more ships appeared from hyperspace. Their weapons began to glow with energy that registered on every sensor in the solar system. Morrison turned to his weapons officer. Commander Brown, status on the Prometheus system? All stations report ready, sir, Brown replied. We've got 200 nuclear-tipped missiles targeted on their lead ship. Plasma cannons are charged and ready. Point defense systems are online. What about the special package? Brown smiled grimly. The antimatter torpedo is loaded and ready to fire. If we can get close enough to their flagship, we can take it out completely. Morrison nodded. The antimatter torpedo was humanity's most secret weapon. It had been developed in underground labs over the course of 20 years. The weapon could destroy anything within a radius of 50 kilometers, but it had never been tested in real combat. The alien fleet continued to advance. Their ships moved in perfect formation. Morrison could see that they expected humanity to surrender or flee. They had probably conquered hundreds of worlds using the same intimidation tactics. All ships, this is Morrison, he broadcast. Remember your training. These aliens fight like a traditional military force. They expect us to meet them in open battle. Instead, we're going to use every dirty trick we know. No honor, no mercy, no rules. We fight to win. The first alien ship crossed into Earth's inner defense zone. Immediately, 1,000 hidden weapons opened fire. Missiles launched from concealed positions throughout the asteroid belt. Laser arrays emerged from what had appeared to be dead satellites. Energy beams struck the alien shields from dozens of directions at once. Morrison watched the tactical display as chaos erupted across the solar system. The aliens were trying to respond to attacks that came from everywhere and nowhere. Their ships were powerful, but they had expected to fight an organized fleet. Instead, they faced an entire solar system that had been turned into a weapon. Their shields are holding, Rodriguez reported. Our conventional weapons aren't penetrating. Then, it's time to get unconventional, Morrison said. All ships, execute Plan Zebra. Show these aliens what humans do when we can't win fair. Plan Zebra was the most desperate strategy in Earth's defense protocols. Instead of fighting ship to ship, human vessels would ram the alien craft at maximum speed. Each ship carried a nuclear warhead that would detonate on impact. It was suicide, but it was also the only way to guarantee damage to the superior alien technology. The destroyer Boston was the first to execute the plan. Captain Bill Turner drove his ship directly toward the alien flagship. The alien crew tried to destroy the approaching vessel, but Turner used debris and asteroids as cover. At the last second, he ejected in an escape pod and let his ship continue, on autopilot. The impact shook space itself. The nuclear warhead punched through the alien shields and tore a massive hole in their hull. Atmosphere and debris poured out into the vacuum. Direct hit, Chen reported. Their flagship is badly damaged. Morrison opened communications with the alien admiral. Kethvar appeared on screen again, but this time his confidence was gone. Behind him, smoke and sparks filled the bridge of his ship. Admiral, Morrison said calmly, you seem to be having some technical difficulties. Would you like to reconsider your position? This is impossible, Kethvar replied. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are inferior. How did you penetrate our defenses? Because we don't fight the way you expect, Morrison explained. You came here thinking we'd line up our ships and have a polite space battle. Instead, we turned our entire solar system into a trap. Every asteroid could be a weapons platform. Every piece of debris could be a missile. You can't fight an enemy that refuses to follow the rules. More explosions lit up the space around the alien fleet. Human fighters, no larger than the alien shuttlecraft, were swarming around the huge ships like angry wasps. They couldn't destroy the aliens with direct firepower, but they could damage sensors, weapon systems, and engines. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare, Kethvar protested. Then maybe we're not civilized, Morrison replied. And maybe that's exactly why you should leave our system before things get worse. The alien admiral looked around his damaged bridge. His perfect formation was broken. His superior technology was being defeated by primitive weapons used in ways he had never imagined. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that fought without honor, without rules, and without mercy. Very well. Kethvar said finally, "We will withdraw, but this matter is not finished. The Empire does not forget insults." "Neither do humans," Morrison replied. "Remember that when you decide whether to come back." The alien ships began to retreat toward the edge of the solar system. As they moved away, Morrison felt a mixture of relief and dread. They had won the first battle, but he knew it would not be the last. The 12th Armada never reached Earth. Admiral Patricia Summers led the human strike fleet in the most audacious military operation in galactic history. Instead of waiting for the aliens to attack, humanity took the war directly to the Empire's core systems. 500 human ships appeared throughout Zephyrian space in a coordinated assault that struck 12 major worlds simultaneously. The attacks were not random acts of destruction. They were carefully planned operations designed to cripple the Empire's ability to wage war. On the bridge of the flagship Liberty, Admiral Morrison coordinated the multi-system offensive. His command ship hung in space above the Zephyrian capital world, surrounded by defensive stations that had never been challenged in 3,000 years. "Admiral, all strike groups report successful target acquisition," announced Commander Beth Taylor from the communications station. "The orbital shipyards at Kenthalar are destroyed. The weapons depot at Vormalik is in flames. The training academy at Zektara has surrendered." Morrison studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Each target had been chosen for maximum strategic impact. The humans were not trying to conquer the Empire. They were trying to break its will to fight. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," Taylor reported. "It's coming from the Imperial capital, the main screen activated to show the interior of the Zephyrian Council chamber." The 7 hierarchs sat in their crystal chairs, but their usual confidence was gone. Behind them, smoke rose from damaged buildings visible through the chamber's windows. Hierarch Vorthak spoke first. "Human Commander, I am Vorthak of the Imperial Council. We wish to discuss terms." Morrison felt a moment of surprise. In all the war games and simulations, human strategists had never expected the Empire to surrender. The plan had been to inflict enough damage to force a negotiated peace, but complete capitulation had seemed impossible. "What terms do you have in mind?" Morrison asked. "Immediate cessation of hostilities," Vorthak replied. "Withdrawal of all human forces from Imperial space. Return to the previous status quo." Morrison shook his head. "I'm afraid that's not acceptable. You attacked our homeworld without provocation. You threatened our entire species with extinction. The status quo is what got us into this war." Admiral Kethvar appeared beside the hierarchs. His uniform was torn and his scales were pale with exhaustion. "Admiral Morrison, I am the military commander who first warned against this conflict. Perhaps we can find terms that satisfy both sides." "I'm listening," Morrison replied. "Complete withdrawal of all Imperial forces from the Sol system and surrounding sectors," Kethvar proposed. "Recognition of human sovereignty over a sphere of space extending 50 light-years from Earth. Immediate cessation of all aggressive actions against human interests." Morrison considered the offer. It was more than humanity had dared hope for when the war began, but it was also less than what their current military position could demand. "Not enough," he said finally. "The Empire has demonstrated that it cannot be trusted to honor agreements. We need guarantees that this will never happen again." "What guarantees do you require?" Vorthak asked. Morrison looked around the bridge of his flagship. Every officer was listening to the conversation that would determine the future of both species. These men and women had risked their lives to bring humanity to this moment of victory. "Complete disarmament of the Imperial fleet," Morrison announced. "Reduction of military forces to levels sufficient only for internal security. Establishment of human monitoring stations throughout Imperial space to verify compliance." The hierarchs recoiled as if they had been struck. "You ask us to surrender our entire civilization to your control," Melthera protested. "I'm asking you to prove that you can be trusted," Morrison replied. "The Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds through military force. Now you'll learn to exist peacefully with your neighbors." "And if we refuse?" Vorthak asked. Morrison gestured toward the tactical display. Red markers showed human ships positioned throughout the Empire. "Then we continue this war until there's nothing left of your civilization worth saving. The choice is yours." Captain Steve Harrison led a single destroyer group to the edge of the Imperial capital system. His mission was simple but profound: deliver humanity's final ultimatum to the species that had once ruled the galaxy. "This is Captain Harrison of the Earth Defense Force," he broadcast on all Imperial frequencies. "Your empire ends today. You can surrender with honor and retain your lives and your worlds, or you can continue fighting and lose everything. The decision is yours, but you have 1 hour to make it." The response came not from the hierarchs, but from Admiral Kethvar. The alien commander appeared on the communication screen looking older and more tired than any Zephyrian in recorded history. "Captain Harrison, this is Admiral Kethvar. I speak for the Imperial military forces. We accept your terms unconditionally. The Empire surrenders." The words echoed across human space like thunder. Humanity had not only survived first contact with a hostile alien civilization, but had emerged victorious. The species that had never left its home system a year ago now dictated terms to rulers of 700 worlds. 3 months later, Morrison stood in the same council chamber where the war had begun. But now the crystal chairs held human officials alongside the remaining Zephyrian leaders. The Empire still existed, but under human supervision. Admiral Kethvar approached Morrison as the formal surrender ceremony concluded. The alien commander had aged visibly during the war, but his bearing remained proud. "Admiral Morrison," Kethvar said, "I must ask you something that has troubled me since our first encounter. Your species has the power to destroy our entire civilization. Why do you show mercy?" Morrison considered the question carefully. It was the same question that had been debated in human government chambers and military academies since the victory. "Because mercy is what separates civilization from savagery, Admiral," he replied. "You threatened our home, and we responded with overwhelming force. But we're not conquerors. We're defenders. There's a difference." "Your people could rule the galaxy if they chose," Kethvar observed. "The technology you've developed, the tactics you've mastered, the sheer determination you've shown. No species could stand against you now." "Maybe," Morrison agreed. "But ruling through fear isn't really ruling at all. It's just delayed rebellion. We'd rather have neighbors than subjects." Kethvar studied the human admiral with something approaching wonder. "I have spent my entire career studying warfare. I thought I understood what made species dangerous, but humans are dangerous in ways I never imagined." "How so?" Morrison asked. "Most dangerous species are predictable," Kethvar explained. "They want territory or resources or power. But humans are dangerous because you want to be left alone. You don't seek conquest, but you'll fight harder than any conqueror to protect what's yours. And when you do fight, you don't follow anyone's rules but your own." Morrison nodded slowly. "We learned a long time ago that the universe is a dangerous place. The only way to survive is to be more dangerous than anything that threatens you. But we also learned that strength without restraint leads to destruction. The Empire ruled through strength alone for 3,000 years. Kethvar reflected. "It took a species we considered primitive to teach us that true power comes from knowing when not to use it." As the surrender ceremony concluded, Morrison looked out through the chamber's crystal windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere among those distant suns were other species, other civilizations, other potential threats. But humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had allies now, former enemies who had learned to respect human strength and human mercy. The Zephyrian Empire had been warned that humans were too dangerous. They had ignored that warning and paid the price. But from the ashes of their defeat, a new understanding had emerged. Humanity was indeed dangerous, but they were dangerous in ways that protected the innocent rather than threatening them. The galaxy would never underestimate the small blue planet again. And perhaps, Morrison thought, that was exactly as it should be. Peace through strength had always been humanity's way. Now it would be the galaxy's way as well. Admiral Kethvar stood beside the human commander and looked out at the same stars. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: hope. The galaxy was changing, and perhaps that change would make it a better place for all species. The war was over. The warnings had been proven correct. And humanity had shown that sometimes the most dangerous species could also be the most merciful. It was a lesson the universe would not soon forget. Hierarch Vorthak slammed his 4 fists on the crystal table. The sound echoed through the council chamber like thunder. Around him, the other hierarchs sat in shocked silence. The holographic display showed the damaged ships of Admiral Kethvar's fleet limping back to Imperial space. "This is impossible," Vorthak growled. "How can a primitive species defeat Imperial technology?" Admiral Kethvar stood in the center of the chamber. His uniform was torn and burned from the battle. One of his arms hung useless at his side. "Honored ones, I tried to warn you. These humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. You let a handful of primitive ships defeat an entire Imperial fleet," accused Hierarch Melthara. "Your incompetence has brought shame upon the Empire." "My incompetence." Kethvar's voice rose in anger. "I followed standard Imperial tactics, the tactics that have conquered 700 worlds. The humans simply refused to cooperate with our expectations." The holographic display changed to show recordings from the battle. Imperial ships moved in perfect formation, while human vessels appeared from hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt. The humans attacked and vanished like ghosts, never staying in one place long enough to be destroyed. "Look at their tactics," Kethvar continued. "They turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Every asteroid hid missiles. Every piece of debris could explode. They sacrificed their own ships to damage ours. What kind of species trains its military to die for tactical advantage?" Hierarch Zeklon leaned forward in his chair. "Are you saying our military doctrine is flawed?" "I'm saying our military doctrine assumes we fight rational opponents," Kethvar replied. "The humans are not rational. They are evolutionarily designed for warfare. They think of tactics we would never consider, because we find them too barbaric." Vorthak studied the battle recordings. The images showed human fighters using ramming attacks against ships 10 times their size. Pilots ejected at the last second while their vessels continued on autopilot to strike Imperial cruisers. No Imperial commander would ever order such attacks, because they violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Deploy the 5th Assault Fleet," Vorthak commanded. 300 ships will be sufficient to crush this human resistance." Admiral Zextar of the 5th Fleet was confident as he prepared for the mission. His armada was the largest force ever, assembled against a single planet. The humans had won one battle through trickery and desperation. They would not be so fortunate against overwhelming numbers. The 5th Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm. 300 ships spread across space in perfect formation. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their shields could deflect any attack the humans might launch. On Earth, General Robert Kane watched the approaching fleet from his command center deep beneath the Colorado Mountains. Intelligence reports indicated this force was 20 times larger than anything humanity had ever faced. But Kane had spent 40 years preparing for this exact scenario. "Colonel Murphy, status on Operation Hornet's Nest?" Kane asked his chief. "Of operations. All deep space positions are active, sir," Colonel Sarah Murphy replied. We have 2 million automated defense platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt. The enemy will have to fight through a maze of weapons to reach Earth. And our mobile forces? 12,000 fighters are deployed and ready. Every pilot has trained for zero-gravity combat in asteroid fields. They know this system better than they know their own bedrooms. Kane nodded grimly. The human defense plan relied on asymmetric warfare. They could not match the aliens in direct firepower, so they would use the solar system itself as their weapon. Every piece of space debris had been weaponized. Every asteroid hid missile launchers and energy cannons. Admiral Zextar observed the human solar system through his flagship's sensors. The asteroid belt appeared to be nothing more than floating rocks and ice. The space around Earth showed only a few small military stations. Clearly, the humans had learned nothing from their previous encounter with Imperial forces. "Begin the advance," Zextar ordered. "Deploy standard attack formation. Target their military installations first, then proceed to orbital bombardment." The Imperial fleet moved toward Earth in tight formation. Their massive ships cut through space like moving mountains. Zextar expected token resistance, followed by quick surrender. No species could stand against such overwhelming force. The first sign of trouble came when the lead ships entered the asteroid belt. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly erupted with weapons fire. Missiles launched from hidden positions among the rocks. Energy beams struck Imperial shields from dozens of directions. Automated defense platforms revealed themselves and opened fire. "Report," Zextar demanded as his ships came under attack. "Multiple contacts throughout the asteroid field," his tactical officer replied. "Estimate over 1 million separate weapons platforms. They're using the asteroids themselves as camouflage." Zextar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a fortified position. Every rock could hide weapons. Every piece of debris could be a threat. His fleet was advancing through a three-dimensional minefield. "Destroy the asteroid belt," he ordered. "Use maximum firepower to clear a path." Imperial ships opened fire with their most powerful weapons. Asteroids exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But for every rock they destroyed, 10 more weapons platforms revealed themselves. The humans had been preparing this defense for decades. Captain Ryan Walsh led Fighter Squadron 7 through the chaos of the asteroid belt. His small ship darted between explosions and energy beams like a bird flying through a thunderstorm. Around him, 11 other pilots followed his lead through paths they had memorized during years of training. "All right, people," Walsh broadcast to his squadron, "remember what we learned in training. These aliens think space combat means big ships shooting at each other. Let's show them what real pilots can do." The human fighters used tactics no Imperial commander had ever seen. They hid behind asteroids and ambushed passing cruisers. They worked in coordinated groups to attack single targets from multiple angles. Most importantly, they used the three-dimensional nature of space to appear above and below enemy formations. Imperial pilots tried to engage the human fighters in traditional dogfights, but the humans refused to cooperate. They would fire a few shots, then disappear behind asteroids before the aliens could respond. They used hit-and-run tactics that frustrated and confused their opponents. "Sir, we're losing ships," reported Zextar's tactical officer. "The enemy fighters are too small and fast for our main weapons. Our fighter squadrons cannot keep up with their maneuvers." Zextar watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Human fighters swarmed around his ships like insects. They could not destroy Imperial cruisers with their light weapons, but they could damage sensors, communications equipment, and engine systems. His fleet was being picked apart one component at a time. The worst surprise came when human ships began using kamikaze attacks. Pilots would load their fighters with nuclear warheads and drive them directly into Imperial vessels. The explosions could not penetrate Imperial shields, but they created electromagnetic pulses that disrupted electronic systems. "This is barbaric," Zextar muttered as he watched another suicide attack strike his flagship. What species sacrifices its own people so casually? A species that understands war better than we do, replied his communications officer. The alien had been monitoring human transmissions during the battle. Sir, their pilots volunteer for suicide missions. They consider it an honor to die for their planet. Zextar could not comprehend such thinking. Imperial military doctrine emphasized the preservation of valuable, trained personnel. Suicide attacks were wasteful and inefficient, but the humans seemed to have an endless supply of pilots willing to die for tactical advantage. The battle raged. For 12 hours, the Imperial fleet advanced slowly through the asteroid belt, taking damage from every direction. Human fighters struck and vanished like ghosts. Automated weapons platforms fired from hidden positions. Nuclear mines detonated among the Imperial formations. By the time Zextar's fleet reached the inner solar system, he had lost over 50 ships. His remaining vessels were damaged and low on ammunition. The humans had not defeated him in direct combat, but they had made victory too expensive to achieve. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld, his communications officer reported. The main screen activated to show a human military officer. The man appeared calm and confident despite the massive alien fleet approaching his planet. Admiral, I'm General Kane of Earth Defense Command, the human said. I see you've had some trouble getting through our outer defenses. Would you like to surrender now? Or shall we show you what we've prepared for the inner system? Zextar stared at the screen in shock. The human was offering him the chance to surrender. After losing 50 ships and thousands of crew members, a primitive species was treating him like a defeated enemy. You dare mock the Imperial fleet? Zextar snarled. I'm not mocking anyone, Kane replied. I'm offering you the chance to leave with the ships you have left. The asteroid belt was just our outer defense line. If you continue toward Earth, you'll face weapons that make